but the band is the band, and without Adam, it's not the band.
Yeah.
I don't think he would want us to continue. It's as Beastie Boys, it'd be weird.
I agree with Adam. Yauch was always the one, like, the more different, like, crazy stuff that we would do, the more Yauch would be excited about it.
When Adam Yauch died on May 4 of 2012, it was not just the loss of a musician. It was the end of the Beastie Boys as the world knew them. His death marked the final chapter of a group that somehow turned one of hip-hop's most controversial starts into a story of real change. But that ending only happened because of a long and messy journey. The Beastie Boys began as three guys from New York who went from hardcore punk to rap. Their names were Adam Yauch, also called MCA, Michael Diamond, known as Mike D, and Adam Horovitz, or Ad Rock. When their first album, License to Ill, came out in 1986, it became a huge hit. But it also created a version of them that was hard to escape. They were marketed as wild frat boys who did not care about anything. And for a while, that image seemed to work. License to Ill was full of songs that treated women badly. One track called Girls had lyrics like, girls to do the dishes, girls to clean up my room, girls to do my laundry. It was the kind of song that made women sound like objects instead of people. Their live shows made things even worse. They had women in cages on stage and used a giant hydraulic penis as a prop. It was shocking and over the top. That was the point. They wanted attention, and they got it. But the problems went deeper than just sexist lyrics. The group originally wanted to call their album Don't Be a Faggot. Columbia Records refused to release it under that name, so they changed it to License to Ill. Even after that, in a 1987 interview, Ad Rock and MCA tried to explain why they did not like gay people. It was painful to watch. Their ignorance was real. This was not just an act. These were young guys who did not understand how their words hurt others. At first, the Beastie Boys said it was all a joke. They claimed songs like Fight for Your Right to Party were making fun of college kids who acted stupid. They said they were doing parody, but if it was just satire, why did they later apologize so many times? MCA himself admitted that it started as a joke, but they got caught up in the hype. They became the thing they were supposed to be mocking. The truth is, their producer Rick Rubin and Def Jam Records marketed them to rebellious white suburban males on purpose. The frat boy image was not an accident. It was a business strategy, and it worked. License to Ill became one of the best-selling rap albums of all time. The success of that album created a big problem. Because it sold so well, the offensive content was everywhere. It was on the radio. It was in stores. It made money for years. That meant the group could not just walk away and pretend it never happened. They had to deal with it, and eventually, they did. If you want to hear more stories about music careers that went completely off the rails, make sure to subscribe. And drop a comment below. Do you think the Beastie Boys really believed in the frat boy act? Or was it always just a parody that went too far? Let me know what you think. The Beastie Boys were also white guys in the genre created by black people. Hip-hop came from the Bronx and from black American culture. So when three white guys became huge stars in rap, people had questions. Some artists in the hip-hop community felt like the Beastie Boys were trying to take over the music and mess up the message. LL Cool J said he liked them as people, but not what they were doing professionally. There was even some rivalry between the Beastie Boys and other rappers on their label. Some of that may have been created by Def Jam to get attention, but the Beastie Boys had something that helped them avoid some of the criticism. They mixed so many types of music together that they were not always seen as just rappers. They blended hip-hop with punk, funk, jazz, and rock. Radio stations played them on alternative rock stations, not just rap stations. They performed at rock festivals. This genre blending let them exist in a different space. People did not always focus on their race the way they did with other white rappers like Vanilla Ice or Eminem. Over time, the Beastie Boys proved they were serious about hip-hop. They did not just defend themselves with words. They put in the work. When people of color questioned their motives, they doubled down on advocacy. They used their money and their fame to bring attention to causes that mattered. They wrote songs against war. They supported movements that most white audiences ignored in the 1980s and 1990s. They also had support from black hip-hop legends like Run DMC, who took them under their wing early on. That gave them credibility. The turning point came in 1989 with their second album, Paul's Boutique. It sounded completely different from License to Ill. The production was complex and layered. It used tons of samples. It was creative and smart, but it did not sell well at first. Capitol Records barely promoted it. It was seen as a commercial failure. But that failure turned out to be a blessing. The group no longer had to live up to the frat boy image. They were free to make the music they wanted. Years later, Paul's Boutique was called the Sgt. Pepper of hip-hop. Critics finally understood what the group was trying to do. Their next albums, Check Your Head in 1992 and Ill Communication in 1994, showed even more growth. They started playing instruments live instead of just rapping. They mixed in funk, jazz, and punk. The music was more mature, and so were they. In 1994, MCA delivered one of the most important moments of their career. On a song called Sure Shot, he rapped an apology. He said the disrespect to women has got to be through. He offered his love and respect to all the mothers and sisters and wives and friends. It was a permanent statement, recorded in their music forever. Ad Rock also apologized in writing. He sent a letter to Time Out New York about the early homophobia and the awful album title they tried to use. These were not small gestures. The group threw away a huge part of what made them successful. The frat boy brand made them rich, but they chose to stand up for what was right instead. That choice cost them money and fans, but it proved their change was real. Adam Yauch took the lead in pushing the group toward activism. He became a Buddhist, and his faith changed him. In 1994, the album Ill Communication included samples of Buddhist monks chanting. The royalties from those samples helped Yauch start the Miller Repa Fund with activist Aaron Potts. The fund organized the Tibetan Freedom Concerts. These were huge events that brought together famous musicians to raise awareness about the Chinese occupation of Tibet. The concerts raised over $3 million. They even put enough pressure on President Bill Clinton that he brought up Tibet in a meeting with the Chinese president. The Beastie Boys were using their fame to create real political change. Their transformation was complete. They went from a group known for cages and penises on stage to a group known for human rights work. They proved that people can grow and learn from their mistakes. But the story does not end there. In 2009, Adam Yauch was diagnosed with cancer. He said it was treatable, but it kept him from performing. He could not even appear in videos for their last album, Hot Sauce Committee Part 2. On May 4th, 2012, Adam Yauch died in Manhattan. He was only 47 years old. His death was the end of the Beastie Boys. But Yauch left behind one final statement. In his will, he banned the use of his music in advertising. That meant turning down tens of millions of dollars. When Monster Energy Drink used their music without permission, the group sued them. Yauch's will was his last stand against commercialism. The frat boy image from License to Ill was all about excess and consumption. Fight for Your Right was an anthem for partying and not caring. Yauch's final act was the complete opposite. He said no to the machine of advertising. He chose integrity over money. In 2014, 2 years after Yauch died, Mike D and Ad Rock officially disbanded the Beastie Boys. They would not continue without him. The group was over. That decision showed respect for what they built together. It also protected their legacy. There would be no reunion tours, no new albums with replacement members. The Beastie Boys would remain exactly what they were. A trio, a complete story, a group that learned and changed. Their career is a rare example of public growth. Most artists do not admit their mistakes. Most do not apologize. And almost none give up money to prove they mean it. The Beastie Boys did all three. They did not make excuses. They did not hide behind the parody defense forever. They owned what they did wrong and spent decades trying to make it right. Their music mattered too. They helped create alternative hip-hop and rap rock. Bands like Rage Against the Machine and Limp Bizkit followed the path they opened. Their willingness to mix genres proved that hip-hop could go anywhere. Innovation meant taking risks and breaking rules. What makes the Beastie Boys special is not License to Ill. It is what came after. It is the apologies. It is the activism. It is Adam Yauch's will. It is Mike D and Ad Rock deciding to end the group instead of continuing without their friend. Their legacy is not about how they started. It is about how they finished. They showed that growth is possible, that change is real, that integrity matters more than money. Adam Yauch's death ended the Beastie Boys, but his final ethical stand made sure they would be remembered the right way. Not as the frat boys who shocked the world in 1986, but as artists who learned, grew, and chose principle over profit. That is the story worth telling. That is the legacy that lasts. If you enjoyed this deep dive into how the Beastie Boys rebuilt their career, stick around for more content about music legends and their wild journeys. Their story proves that it is never too late to do the right thing. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double check responses.